Two worlds, two heroes, two completely different soundtracks. I could compare them to decide which one is better, but that's the wrong question. Because these soundtracks weren't made to compete, they were crafted to fit the worlds they belong to. So yes, we are comparing them today, but not to find a winner. Instead, to discover why both are perfect for the stories they support, why both are winners, just in different ways. Here's how we'll break this down. Firstly, we will look at both soundtracks respectively. Then we will highlight the differences and contrasts between the two. In the fourth section, I will present some facts that push both soundtracks from great to masterful. And the fifth section will be the final head-to-head, where we conclude this topic. Let's dive in. Let's begin in Hollow Nest, a kingdom of echoes. A place where every corridor feels like it remembers something you have forgotten. And right from the moment you hear the opening notes of Dirtmouth, you understand what this soundtrack is all about. Melancholy, mystery, and memory. Christopher Larkin built Hollow Knight's identity almost entirely from piano, strings, soft brass, and ghostly harmonies. There is nothing flashy, nothing overwhelming. Just a quiet sorrow that fills the silence between every step. Take City of Tears, a track that's so iconic players can identify it from two notes. But what most people don't realize is that the fast, fluttering arpeggios, they literally mimic the rainfall. It's not just ambience, the music is communicating the city's grief, note by note. And then there's the White Palace. Larkin uses almost nothing but relentless, mechanical arpeggios. It's stressful on purpose, mirroring the platforming gauntlet, as if the music itself wants you to fail. And the biggest shock about this is that most of the orchestral sounding score was recorded in Larkin's bedroom. No $1 million studio, no full orchestra. Just one composer with a microphone, a keyboard, and a vision. What you might also miss is how often melodies reappear, distorted, slowed down, or hidden inside other tracks. This creates a sense that all of Hollow Knight's stories are connected, even before you learn why. Hollow Knight soundtrack doesn't just accompany the journey, it amplifies the emptiness of the world. It makes the silence feel heavy, it makes the ruins feel deeper. It's a requiem, a musical farewell to a kingdom you never truly knew. Now let's turn our ears toward Farloom, a world that doesn't whisper, but sings. Silksong's sound is sharper, faster, more expressive. It mirrors Hornet herself, agile, emotional, and fully alive. The soundtrack feels fundamentally different from Hollow Knight. Where Hollow Knight wanders, Silksong moves. Its themes are built around percussion, plucked strings, and rhythmic motifs that feel like momentum. The melodies don't drift, they dance. The scale choices alone give Silksong a unique flavor. There are hints of Eastern and folk modalities. Bright, nimble, and full of tension, as if every track is urging Hornet upward toward something. Unlike Hollow Knight's intimate, bedroom-born soundtrack, Silksong appears to use more live solo instrumentalists, violins, harps, flutes. It's more expensive, more layered, more ambitious. One of the wildest discoveries fans have made is that several intervals in Hornet's theme are versions of those associated with the night. Where his melody falls, hers rises. Where his theme aches, hers pushes forward. This isn't just music, it's storytelling baked into the composition. We will touch on this a bit later. Larkin even incorporates rhythmic patterns resembling sewing or stitching. Every beat feels like a thread being pulled through a fabric. A brilliant touch, and one that makes her soundtrack feel alive with intention. If Hollow Knight is built on a sorrow, Silksong is built on a struggle. And its soundtrack is shaping up to be a fiery declaration rather than a quiet reflection. Now let's put these two soundtracks side by side. Not to judge them, but to understand what they are doing. Hollow Knight feels like a kingdom long dead. Silksong, on the other hand, feels like a kingdom in motion, full of tension and vibrancy. Where Hollow Knight leans heavily into minor keys, Silksong branches into modal and eastern scales, giving it a mystical, energetic edge. Hollow Knight's rhythm drift like a mist. Silksong's rhythms snap, leap, and drive forward with purpose. Now let's compare the instrumentation that both soundtracks use. In Hollow Knight, pianos, violins, and soft brasses are mostly common. Silksong, on the other hand, utilizes harps, flutes, percussion, and sharp strings. The final point will be the narrative philosophy behind the soundtracks. Hollow Knight's entire world is built around falling. Silksong's world is built around rising, and the music reflects that in the very first note respectively. These soundtracks don't oppose each other, they mirror each other, a downward echo versus an upward cry. Now we will go through some interesting facts about both soundtracks that give them their identity, that give them their magic. Without them, the soundtrack wouldn't be that much worth talking about. A Hollow Knight soundtrack uses emotional misdirection. Larkin often begins tracks with a false emotional tone before revealing the true theme. For example, several early game tracks begin with a gentle, almost comforting harmonies, before shifting into something darker or more tragic. This is extremely unusual in game scoring, which almost always aims for a clear tone signaling. Larkin uses emotional misdirection to mirror Hollow Knight's lore, where beauty hides corruption and comfort hides ancient rot. Another interesting fact is that Silksong's music is being written with vertical mobility in mind. This scoring method is usually reserved for AAA action games. Most indie games score areas horizontally, one track per zone. Silksong, however, seems to be using a technique common in high-budget action titles, writing music that musically rises as the player moves upward or gains momentum. It's subtle, but the trailer theme already features motifs that become increasingly accented, brighter and more staccato as the piece progresses. This is extremely rare for indies because it demands more recording complexity and tighter synchronization with the movement. Silksong isn't just faster, its music is literally designed to ascend with you. Another point is that Hollow Knight's leitmotifs secretly bleed into unrelated areas, not for story reasons, but for psychological ones. There are traces of the main Hollow Knight melody hidden in areas that don't directly relate to the lore. This wasn't accidental. Larkin said he wanted the player to subconsciously feel like they were always close to the truth, even when they weren't. It's a psychological trick. You feel the world is connected even before you understand why. This is why Hollow Knight's world feels strangely unified. The music is stitching your emotions together behind the scenes. Another thing is that Hollow Knight's seamlessly simple tracks are actually pretty complex. Tracks like Dirtmouth, Green Path, and even the Resting Grounds look simple on the surface, but their chord progressions use modal interchange, extended chords, unresolved cadences, and uncommon chromatic passing tones. This creates a feeling of a world that is not at rest. The complexity is hidden beneath a soft, minimal surface. It's like an emotional subtext in musical form. Another fact about Silksong's soundtrack is that its harmonic structure is kinda ambiguous. Its early music uses bright modes that tend to resolve upward, but some motifs end on a suspended or incomplete cadences, implying potential instability. This duality suggests that the journey may be triumphant, but the resolution could be tonally ambiguous or even tragic. Composers often foreshadow narrative twists through unresolved musical ideas, so Silksong's OST might be hinting at something big. Hollow Knight's OST breaks scene-localized scoring rules. What I mean by that is typically music changes to match the environment, but in Hollow Knight, music sometimes ignores the environment and sticks to the character's emotional state instead. For example, high-intensity areas have calm music, peaceful areas have tracks filled with dread. This inversion makes Hollow Knight feel emotionally unpredictable, like the world is gaslighting you. It's a technique used in psychological thrillers, not action platformers. Another point worth talking about is Silksong's use of silence. Hollow Knight used silence to create emptiness. Silksong appears to use silence to create anticipation, a very different psychological effect. Silksong's music sometimes stops abruptly before combat, vertical ascension, traversal bursts, or key reveals. This is a cinematic technique designed to heighten player tension, a tactic usually seen in horror or suspense films, not fast-paced platformers. We have touched on this next point a little bit earlier, but let's delve deeper into it. Larkin may be building a musical language that spans both games. Film franchises, like Star Wars for example, use interconnected thematic languages. The inversion of intervals between Hollow Knight and Silksong suggests that Larkin is creating a musical dialect, where both games speak in the same musical grammar but with different accents. What Larkin basically doing is that he is creating a multi-game musical narrative arc, which is just insane. And now for the part that might spark arguments. The hot take. Everyone wanted Silksong to outdo Hollow Knight's soundtrack, to be bigger, better, more iconic. But here's the twist no one expects. Silksong doesn't surpass Hollow Knight, because it isn't trying to. Hollow Knight's score is a requiem for a dying kingdom. Silksong's is a battle cry from a living one. You cannot compare a funeral hymn to a victory march. They serve different purposes, different moods, different emotional destinies. Trying to rank them is like asking whether sunrise or sunset is better. If Hollow Knight is a memory you can't escape, Silksong is the future sprinting towards you. And you don't judge a battle cry by how well it mourns. So now that you have heard the deeper story behind both soundtracks, which one do you think better defines its world? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the music and meaning behind these games, hit like, subscribe and ring the bell for more breakdowns like this. See you next time.